The targumim were spoken paraphrases, explanations and expansions of the Jewish scriptures that a rabbi would give in the common language of the listeners, which was then often Aramaic, that had become necessary near the end of the 1st century BCE, as the common language was in transition and Hebrew was used for little more than schooling and worship. Eventually, it became necessary to give explanations and paraphrases in the common language after the Hebrew scripture was read. The noun Targum is derived from early Semitic quadriliteral root trgm, and the Akkadian term targummanu refers to translator, interpreter. It occurs in the Hebrew Bible in Ezra chapter 4 verse 18. The document which you sent us has been read in translation before me. Besides denoting the translations of the Bible, the term Targum also denote the oral rendering of Bible lections in synagogue, while the translator of the Bible was simply called as trgm. Other than the meaning, translate, the verb targum also means to explain. The word targum refers to translation and argumentation or explanation. Writing down the Targum was prohibited. Nevertheless, some targumatic writings appeared as early as the middle of the 1st century CE. They were then not recognized as authoritative by the religious leaders. However, some subsequent Jewish traditions accepted the written targumim as authoritative, and eventually, it became a matter of debate. Today, only Jews from the Republic of Yemen continue to use the targumim liturgically as translations. The targumim largely reflect midrashic interpretation of the Tanakh from the time they were written and are notable for eschewing anthropomorphisms in favor of allegorical readings. That is true both for those targumim that are fairly literal as well as for those that contain many midrashic expansions. In 1541, Elie Levita wrote and published Sefer Meturgeman, explaining all the Aramaic words found in the Targum. An Aramaic Bible is also used in the Syriac Church. In addition, targumim are used today as sources in text-critical editions of the Bible. Two major genres. The two most important targumim for liturgical purposes are Targum Onkelos on the Torah, Targum Jonathan ben Uziel on the Nevi'im. These two targumim are mentioned in the Babylonian Talmud as Targum Dilin, giving them official status. In the synagogues of Talmudic times, Targum Onkelos was read alternately with the Torah, verse by verse, and Targum Jonathan was read alternately with the selection from Nevi'im. This custom continues today in Yemenite Jewish synagogues. The Yemenite Jews are the only Jewish community to continue the use of Targum as liturgical text, as well as to preserve a living tradition of pronunciation for the Aramaic of the Targumim. Besides its public function in the synagogue, the Babylonian Talmud also mentions Targum in the context of a personal study requirement. A person should always review his portions of scripture along with the community, reading the scripture twice and the Targum once. This too refers to Targum Onkelos on the public Torah reading and to Targum Jonathan on the Haftarah from Nevi'im. Medieval biblical manuscripts of the Tiberians Mesorah sometimes contain the Hebrew text interpolated verse by verse with the Targumim. This scribal practice has its roots both in the public reading of the Targum and in the private study requirement. The two official Targumim are considered Eastern. Nevertheless, scholars believe they too originated in the land of Israel because of a strong linguistic substratum of Western Aramaic. Though these Targumim were later Easternized, the substratum belying their origins still remains. In post-Talmudic times, when most Jewish communities had ceased speaking Aramaic, the public reading of Targum along with the Torah and Haftarah was abandoned in most communities, Yemen being a well-known exception. The private study requirement to review the Targum was never entirely relaxed, even when Jewish communities had largely ceased speaking Aramaic. and the Targum never ceased to be a major source for Jewish exegesis. For instance, it serves as a major source in the Torah commentary of Shlomo Yitzhaki, Rashi, and therefore has always been the standard fare for Ashkenazis Jews. For these reasons, Jewish editions of the Tanakh, which include commentaries, still almost always print the Targum alongside the text, in all Jewish communities. Nevertheless, later halakhic authorities argued that the requirement to privately review the Targum might also be met by reading a translation in the current vernacular in place of the official Targum, or else by studying an important commentary containing midrashic interpretation. Targum Ketuvim. The Talmud explicitly states that no official targumim were composed besides these two on Torah and Nevi'im alone, and that there is no official Targum to Ketuvim. An official Targum was in fact unnecessary for Ketuvim because its books played no fixed liturgical role. The Talmud states the Targum of the Pentateuch was composed by Onkelos the proselyte from the mouths of Eleazar and Joshua. The Targum of the prophets was composed by Jonathan ben Uziel under the guidance of Haggai, Zechariah and Malachi, and the land of Israel quaked over an area of 400 parasangs by 400 parasangs, and a bath coal came forth and exclaimed, "Who is this that has revealed my secrets to mankind?" Jonathan b. Uziel thereupon arose and said, "It is I who have revealed thy secrets to mankind. It is fully known to thee that I have not done this for my own honor or for the honor of my father's house, but for thy honor have done it, that dissension may not increase in Israel." He further sought to reveal a Targum of the hagiographer, but a bath coal went forth and said, "Enough." What was the reason? Because the date of the Messiah is foretold in it. But did Onkelos the proselyte compose the Targum to the Pentateuch? Has not Ika said, in the name of Hananel who had it from Rab, what is meant by the text, Neh 8:8, and they read in the book, in the law of God, with an interpretation. And they gave the sense and caused them to understand the reading, and they read in the book, in the law of God. This indicates the text, with an interpretation. This indicates the Targum. Nevertheless, most books of Ketuvim have targumim, whose origin is mostly Western rather than Eastern, but for lack of a fixed place in the liturgy, they were poorly preserved and less well known. From Palestine, the tradition of Targum to Ketuvim made its way to Italy, and from the to medieval Ashkenaz and Sepharad. The targumim of Psalms, Proverbs, and Job are generally treated as a unit. As of the targumim of the 5 scrolls, the Targum of Chronicles is quite late, possibly medieval, and is attributed to a Rabbi Joseph. Other targumim on the Torah. There are also a variety of Western targumim on the Torah, each of which was traditionally called Targum Yerushalmi. An important one of these was mistakenly labeled Targum Jonathan in later printed versions. The error crept in because of an abbreviation. The printer interpreted the abbreviation TY to stand for Targum Jonathan instead of the correct Targum Yerushalmi. Scholars refer to this Targum as Targum Pseudo-Jonathan. To attribute this Targum to Jonathan ben Uziel flatly contradicts the Talmudic tradition, which quite clearly attributes the Targum to Nevi'im alone to him, while stating that there is no official Targum to Ketuvim. In the same printed versions, a similar fragment Targum is correctly labeled as Targum Yerushalmi. The Western Targumim on the Torah, or Palestinian Targumim as they are also called, consist of 3 manuscript groups: Targum Neophytii, fragment Targums, and Cheirogenes, fragment Targums. Of these, Targum Neophytii is by far the largest. It consists of 450 folios covering all books of the Pentateuch, with only a few damaged verses. The history of the manuscript begins 1587 when the censor Andrea de Monte bequeathed it to Ugo Boncompagni, which presents an oddity, since Boncompagni, better known as Pope Gregory XIII, died in 1585. The route of transmission may instead be by certain Giovan Paolo Eustachio Romano Neofito. Before this, de Monte had censored it by deleting most references to idolatry. In 1602, Boncompagni's estate gave it to the Collegium Ecclesiasticum Adolescentium Neophitorum until 1886, when the Vatican bought it along with other manuscripts when the Collegium closed. Unfortunately, it was then mistitled as a manuscript of Targum Onkelos until 1949, when Alejandro Diaz Macho noticed that it differed significantly from Targum Onkelos. It was translated and published during 1968 to 79, and has since been considered the most important of the Palestinian targumim, as it is by far the most complete and, apparently, the earliest as well. The fragment targums consist of a large number of fragments that have been divided into 10 manuscripts. Of these, P, V and L were first published in 1899 by M. Ginsberger, A, B, C, D, F and G in 1930 by P. Carl and E in 1955 by Diaz Macho. Unfortunately, these manuscripts are all too fragmented to confirm what the purpose were, but they seem to be either the remains of a single complete targum or short variant readings of another targum. As a group, they often share theological views, and with Targum Neophytii, which has led to the belief that they could be variant readings of the Targum. The Cheirogenes or fragment Targums originate from the Ben Ezra synagogues Genes in Cairo. They share similarities with the fragment Targums in that they consist of a large number of fragmented manuscripts that have been collected in one Targum group. The manuscripts A and E are the oldest among the Palestinian Targum and have been dated to around the 7th century. Manuscripts C, E, H and Z contain only passages from Genesis, A from Exodus, while M, S, B contain verses from both as well as from Deuteronomium. Peshitta. The Peshitta is the traditional Bible of Syriac-speaking Christians. Many scholars believe that its Old Testament is based on rabbinic targumim, although influenced by the Septuagint, and it is generally reckoned to have been translated between 100 BCE and 100 CE.